To build our dream house, what we need is a plan. We need a blueprint from world-leading experts, from those who have been there, done that experience, and know exactly what it takes to make your dream house a reality. And the same thing goes for achieving elite human performance in any endeavor, from athleticism to general career. Welcome to the Elite Athlete Blueprint podcast, the podcast that will give you all of the tools that you need to make sure that you can learn from the absolute best wisdom available on the topic of elite performance and spend the next 10 years putting in the 10,000 hours of work you need to achieve elite athletic performance. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Elite Athlete Blueprint. Now, today I'm just going to be talking about one of the core concepts, and in fact, the core concept that sort of underpins the structure of this whole Elite Athlete Blueprint. Now, this framework was sort of adapted from, I guess you could say it's adapted from human physiology and performance in general, and it certainly isn't my idea, but it was essentially adapted from, or the way that I represented it in terms of 6 key pillars was adapted from the Entourage. Now, the Entourage is an entrepreneurial education platform for business owners and entrepreneurs, and it sort of goes into all the 6 key elements of business in terms of everything that a business owner or an entrepreneur would really need to know to be able to run a business effectively, and the 6 key areas of business. And what they're broken down into is marketing, sales, finance, operations, product, and people. So they're the 6 key areas of business. And it really helps to organize a business in that way, because as a business owner, you have to be on top of those things. And the reason why that program has been so successful, it's founded by Jack DeLosa, who has a bunch of TED Talks and is quite a figure in the entrepreneurial space, particularly in Australia. The Entourage is worth, I think, 8 figures, tens of millions of dollars, and has entrepreneurs from all over the world involved in it. And in my opinion, it is the premier sort of entrepreneurial education program. And the reason that is so successful is because it's a program that has all of the information available and needed for a business owner, and it categorizes it all, and it allows you to connect with it in a way that just allows you to get sort of 1% better every day and learn a little bit more about what you need to know to optimize your business. Now, the reason why I talk about that in an athletic blueprint context and an athletic context is because that structure is the exact same thing that I have taken to apply to this Elite Athlete Blueprint. Now, the biggest issue in my eyes with most of the information out there for athletic development is the simple fact that all of the information, or most of the information, is a scattergun approach. There are experts in their individual area, in the individual field, and they may be like the world's best people on that particular topic. But the issue is that these people don't connect the dots for us. There are some great podcasts, like you can listen to the PJF Performance podcast, you can listen to any one of the strength and conditioning podcasts to look at physical preparation. The physical preparation podcast is a great example of that. You can look at all of the basketball information that Drew Hanlon provides. You can look at a lot of the coaching resources from FIBA. You can look at anything to do with mindset preparation from the Deep Game and everything like that. They're all experts in their individual little silo. But the problem with most people is that they get this information, and either they brush it off because they don't understand it and they don't know how to apply it, and they're like, it's just crap because it didn't work for me, or it's too esoteric or whatever, without realizing that if they had have had it, if it had have got to them at the right time, they would have been able to interact with that information. And the reason why I know that's true is because that has been me at certain stages of my own development and my own sort of athletic career, is seeing information and not connecting with it at the time because it just didn't sit with me at the time. I didn't understand how to apply it. I didn't apply it. And then I was like, that's crap. It doesn't work. And I think that really is the biggest problem with athletic training and athletic preparation is that no one's taking a holistic perspective on the concept of athletic prep. The only people that are doing that are coaches, and these coaches, they're just sort of using their information in an outdated, archaic way, one-to-one with athletes that they work with. They don't have a system that is clearly mapped out that anyone can interact with and slowly access at their own time. And rarely do they encourage athletes, unless they're really, really good coaches, rarely do they encourage athletes to be their own best coaches. Or if they do encourage them, they don't have a way to, constantly bridge that gap and constantly allow people to interact with it. And so that is the aim of this elite athlete blueprint. It is to do exactly the thing that I just talked about athletic preparation world not doing. And in the analogy of the entourage, the reason why there were so many business coaches out there and the reason why the entourage is absolutely amazing is because it's just not taken the rug out from under the market, but it's given the market a complete guide, a complete system. Even though there's so many business coaches out there, it's given the first sort of comprehensive guide with world experts that allows basically the end-to-end solution for business. And then if you want to learn more specifics, like, you're not going to get the world's best sales and marketing advice from the entourage. You're going to get some damn good sales and marketing advice, but it's not going to be the same as doing a 10-week Grant Cardone intensive, for example, for sales. But you're going to get basically everything you need. And then if you want to specialize in sales, or you want someone to be a sales specialist, then comes the Grant Cardone course or the specialist course. And that's sort of what the Elite Athlete Blueprint is about. We want to provide you with the general map for the next 10 years plus of your athletic career, so that if you choose to interact with the stuff that we have with the Sydney Supersonics, great, fantastic. You can interact with our coaches, you can interact with our games, our comps, and you will get a lot of benefit from it. But the bigger advantage of this program is that anyone, anywhere, anytime can use it. You could be an athlete who is in their late 40s and just wants to perform better at their chosen sport, or you can be a 10-year-old basketballer who's keen to get involved, or a 7-year-old basketballer who we worked with the other week who's super keen and just wants to learn everything they can. And you want to get involved with our stuff. But, you don't need to be a Supersonics athlete participating in our comps to get the most out of this. And you could be in any place in the world and use this information to guide your development as a human being and as an athlete, and really get a lot from it. And so this is sort of independent of the Supersonics. And then what we want to do is, where we're sort of not able to provide the information ourselves because of a lack of experience, or someone else has done it better, then we're going to plug in the best people in the world for that topic. And that's the advantage of the internet. There's so many great online programs and great coaches who can provide their service from anywhere, such as the Knees Over Toes guy, who, in my opinion, is the best strength and conditioning coach for basketball. Barring sort of Paul Fabreitz, I think they both have advantages depending on the type of athlete, and that is a decision for you to engage with. We will provide the information, and if you go through our rehab partner, MTP Health, they can suggest kind of what is best recommended for you. But those are two of the best strength and conditioning coaches for basketball that have a program that can be used anywhere. And they're an example of someone who's providing world-class service that we're not going to reinvent the wheel. We're not going to try and create a basketball strength and conditioning program, because they're already doing it the best in the world. That's the program that I use myself in terms of the Knees Over Toes program. And I've got life-changing results, the best results I've ever gotten. Great information, and I'm just not going to try and pull the rug out from underneath someone like that, because my vision for this is to sort of stand on the shoulders of giants and do things better than they've ever been done before. Or I should say, not do things better than they've ever been done before, but be someone who stands on the shoulders of giants and connects with the resources that already exist, to make something that connects everything together and didn't exist before. And then if there is something that already exists, then simply connect people with that thing, because they will get the most benefit from interacting with that. Now, with that said, that is how we're going to be going about it. So if you see me mentioning or linking to skill videos of other trainers, or something like the deep game of basketball, or the physical preparation stuff from MTP Health, or the physical preparation stuff from Knees Over Toes guy, just know that we may have a partnership with them down the line. I don't have a partnership with any of those places other than MTP Health because they're really looking after us as the Sydney Supersonics at the moment. But down the line, perhaps we could have a partnership with these people. But the reason that they're in there, and if something better did come up, then we would absolutely have no qualms in recommending that thing. But we want this to be your opportunity to access the best of what we know about in the world to get the exact solution that you need so that we can provide the map of the athletic blueprint that you need. And you can have access at your fingertips to every single solution that you need at the right time. Through what already exists, whether it's podcasts like the Impact Theory and Tim Ferriss Show, or it's physical preparation through the stuff that Paul Favourites and Knees Over Toes guy Ben Patrick is doing, or whether it's deep game stuff to further improve your mindset through Taylor Allen and Drew Hanlon, or it's individual skill work through guys like Drew Hanlon and the skill trainers that we have as part of our network, and Tyler Relf, and guys like DJ Sackman, things like that, 10,000 hours, all that kind of stuff. We're going to plug you in with the best available information. And that is what the Elite Athlete Blueprint is really about. It's providing our knowledge and our insight, as I've sort of talked about it. Most of the episodes, I am an exercise and sports scientist with 10 plus years of experience in the industry, 13 years experience as an athlete, and over 10,000 hours of reading and research into this area and field of human performance. And so I've sort of mapped out, in the way that the Entourage mapped out business and connected all the dots together. That is exactly what we're doing with the Elite Athlete Blueprint. Now, to dive into these 6 headings, the 6 topics or the 6 key areas of athletic performance. And the reason why I think these are so important is because once we sort of categorize everything, then we simply have an ability to interact and take knowledge. It's like I talked about the tree of knowledge and how we can learn anything in a prior episode, but we can take all of the knowledge that we get and then we can compartmentalize into where it sits. And we can find, okay, it might not be relevant for us now, but somewhere down the line it may be relevant for us. And then we can find where to apply it, where to put it, and the knowledge becomes useful. Because as we know, our knowledge is sort of like a tree, and the only way that we can connect new knowledge to prior knowledge is by interacting it. Sorry, the only way we can remember things is by connecting new knowledge to prior knowledge. So we have to have a frame of reference to layer it upon, and that is what the Elite Athlete Blueprint is all about, and why I think everyone should study exercise and sports science, or every athlete should study exercise and sports science, because really it's the fundamentals of human performance in anything. So if you want to be the best human you can be, then you've got to know exercise and sports science. Perfect analogy for why that is the case is because for dancers, for ballet dancers and elite dancers, they all understand human physiology and anatomy, and they do basically a sports science degree, because that is what is required to be an elite dancer. You need to understand human anatomy and human physiology to the nth degree. Now, without going too far into a bit of a tangent there, sort of want to circle it back and go back to the idea of the 6 key areas of athletic performance. Now, what we have as the first area, and this is probably the most important area for the fundamentals, I sort of want to class it as the fundamentals of athletic performance. And this is, I guess it goes in order of specificity to your sport. I always want to start with physical preparation in general. Now, there is a concept within this podcast for physical preparation that I call long-term athletic development, or not I call long-term athletic development, that is long-term athletic development. And it is a really important concept for developing sporting performance. So as I had just spoken about before, we've got the 6 sort of key areas of athletic development for the purposes of the Elite Athlete Blueprint. Now, to cover those again, we have firstly I guess like in order of least or most fundamental to general sporting performance and least specific to then more specific. First we have mindset, physical preparation, then recovery, then skill specific, sporting skill specific, then tactical skill specific. So actually learning out the tactics of your specific game. For the example of basketball, there's 5-on-5 versus 3-on-3, which both have different tactics, and we're going to be focusing on the specific tactics to 3-on-3 because no one else is doing that, and that in and of itself would be worth its weight in gold as a course. So those 6 key elements in order of fundamentals for general sporting performance. So we've got in the course, they're differently ordered, but I'm just going to go from least specific to most specific, and I've broken it down into, firstly, mindset. Secondly, lifestyle. Thirdly, physical preparation. Fourth, recovery. Fifth, sporting specific skill. And lastly, tactical specific preparation. Now, I just sort of talked about the differences between 5-on-5 and 3-on-3 and why the tactical element is covered. And that in and of itself could be its own course, which I really firmly believe because no one else is doing anything for 3-on-3. Now, to go over those sort of in that order, like I guess firstly we'll start with mindset. Mindset is so crucial, and in my opinion, probably should be the first pillar that everyone goes through in any activity, and it's absolutely essential for just about any sport and any activity ever, really. Without the proper mindset going into it, we're never going to achieve our fullest potential in that activity. And each of these individual areas is probably going to warrant its own lecture. But this is just going to be a real high-level overview so you can get an idea of those 6 key elements and why they are so important. But the mindset piece is absolutely massive because of the fact that essentially, if we don't have the right mindset, we're not going to be able to adapt and be motivated to achieve the things we want to achieve and to do the things that we need to do to improve our performance. And so with the right mindset comes the best ways to achieve our goals. If you listen to all of the other podcasts from the ones on motivation to the ones on different elements of achievement and science of achievement and everything like that, you'll see why mindset is such a crucial piece to this whole puzzle. Really, without mindset, we can't do any of the things necessary to get to where we need to be. And I think the best way to summarize mindset is like when you have the right why, so when you know why you're doing something and you have your mindset optimized towards, okay, this is why I am doing what I'm doing, this is why I'm working towards what I'm doing. And in the goal setting audio, episode 8, I really dived incredibly deep into that. And so that is so important to listen to understand the importance of mindset. Really, that's the summary of it. And, layered throughout all of these podcasts is going to be why I think mindset is so important. And, understanding why you're doing what you're doing is the key to having the right mindset. And then when you have the right mindset, you're able to do everything you need to do to be able to achieve optimal success in whatever it is that you're doing. Because without mindset, you're not going to be doing the right things. And without doing the right things, then you're not going to be achieving what it is that you need to achieve. Because at the end of the day, there are a set of things that need to be done to achieve what it is that you want to do. And for most things that we do want to do, they have been achieved before, whether it's playing professionally in the NBA or there's tons of people playing in the NBA. Why don't you ask them what they did to get to where they are? And that is sort of what mindset is all about. It's knowing why you're doing what you're doing, and then you can bear almost any what to get to where you want to go, provided the why is strong enough. So mindset, that's why I think it's fundamentally crucial. And to, again, dive deeper into that, check out any of our first episodes, particularly episode 8 on goal setting, and that will give you a crystal clear picture of mindset. So the moving on to the second concept that I really think is incredibly important, let's talk about physical preparation. Now, physical preparation is just a fancy word of describing how to get your body optimized in a way that allows you to perform as you need to perform for your chosen sport. Now, for the context of basketball, the physical preparation revolves around being able to run fast, or like not even run really, being able to move fast on the floor with a quick first step, to be able to jump, to be able to be athletic, basically. Physical preparation is everything revolving around the physical development of the capabilities that allow us to perform our sport well. And physical preparation, I think, is a great term because another term that's used is strength and conditioning, but I like physical preparation because it goes beyond just strength. Basketball is a minor strength component to it. And the best way to summarize physical preparation is the specific adaptations to impose demands principle. Essentially, there's a specificity principle to sport, and what we do, we get good at. And so by working on our specific capacities, and there's a big science to it, and this is essentially what I spent, better part of, better part of 15 years studying, but really at university, it's what I spent my university degree studying, is how does the human body adapt to various things, and what is needed to create performance adaptations for sport. And that is essentially what physical preparation is all about. And so I'm going to be providing the most impactful information that I know of, to allow you to achieve optimal physical preparation. And as I talked about at the start of the episode, there are tons of amazing resources out there on this for basketball, and I'm not going to try and reinvent the wheel. I'm going to provide some of the theory and some of the key concepts you need to know. And in terms of the practical stuff, we might provide some things. We'll get MTP to do some basic stuff, but for the most part, I'm going to leave it up to the experts because it is a complex field and it's highly individualized to the level that you're at. So I don't want to reinvent the wheel. Now, that sort of summarizes physical preparation, and there's so much more to it than just strength. Like, I guess people think of the gym when they typically think of physical preparation, but really it's about understanding, what goes into, what are the energy demands, what are the physical requirements of playing basketball, and then how does our body adapt to improve those things. And that's a good way to think of physical preparation. And that's why I really like, firstly, the knees over toes guy program, because most people, I find in my experience, are undertrained at a very base level because of the way we live our lives. Physical preparation is a concept that should apply to everyone because at the end of the day, like, we are human beings. We're designed to be walking 16 kilometers a day. We're designed to be picking up heavy things and doing intermittent bouts of sprint work. If we sort of look back to what our ancestors evolved to do, it was those type of activities, a lot of walking, a lot of low intensity activity, the odd bit of high intensity activity, and lifting some heavy things and moving stuff. And that's what our body thrives on. Our body thrives on that kind of movement. And when we do move in that way, we, like they talk about with the physical activity guidelines, an hour of exercise a day is really good for improving our mortality and reducing our risk of death and improving our quality of life and everything like that. So by doing those things and by moving often, we're improving the function of our human body. And so I think physical preparation applies to anyone living life in the modern context, because the opposite also happens. When we don't physically prepare ourselves and we don't move, then our body starts to become diseased. When we stop moving as a basketball player, so we take the summer off because it's not basketball season, when we sit at home and play video games, then we're going to be worse as a basketball player. We're not going to get better. We're actually going to lose our physical preparation and our capacity. And this is what happens tragically to a lot of players, is they stop playing in summer and they stop playing year round and they lose a lot of capacity to play. And so I think physical preparation is important for everyone. And as human beings, we must physically prepare ourselves for the activities that we're doing to reduce injury and really to just perform as well as we can. So those 6 key elements in order of fundamentals for general sporting performance. So we've got In the course, they're differently ordered, but I'm just going to go from least specific to most specific. And I've broken it down into, firstly, mindset. Secondly, lifestyle. Thirdly, physical preparation. Fourth, recovery. Fifth, sporting specific skill. And lastly, tactical specific preparation. Now, I just sort of talked about the differences between 5-on-5 and 3-on-3 and why the tactical element is covered. And that in and of itself could be its own course, which I really firmly believe because no one else is doing anything for 3-on-3. Now, to go over those sort of in that order, like I guess firstly we'll start with mindset. Mindset is so crucial, and in my opinion, probably should be the first pillar that everyone goes through in any activity, and it's absolutely essential for just about any sport and any activity ever, really. Without the proper mindset going into it, we're never going to achieve our fullest potential in that activity. And each of these individual areas is probably going to warrant its own lecture. But this is just going to be a real high-level overview so you can get an idea of those 6 key elements and why they are so important. But the mindset piece is absolutely massive because of the fact that essentially, if we don't have the right mindset, we're not going to be able to adapt and be motivated to achieve the things we want to achieve and to do the things that we need to do to improve our performance. And so with the right mindset comes the best ways to achieve our goals. If you listen to all of the other podcasts from the ones on motivation to the ones on different elements of achievement and science of achievement and everything like that, you'll see why mindset is such a crucial piece to this whole puzzle. Really, without mindset, we can't do any of the things necessary to get to where we need to be. And I think the best way to summarize mindset is like when you have the right why, so when you know why you're doing something and you have your mindset optimized towards, okay, this is why I am doing what I'm doing, this is why I'm working towards what I'm doing. And in the goal setting audio, episode 8, I really dived incredibly deep into that. And so that is so important to listen to understand the importance of mindset. Really, that's the summary of it. And, layered throughout all of these podcasts is going to be why I think mindset is so important. And, understanding why you're doing what you're doing is the key to having the right mindset. And then when you have the right mindset, you're able to do everything you need to do to be able to achieve optimal success in whatever it is that you're doing. Because without mindset, you're not going to be doing the right things. And without doing the right things, then you're not going to be achieving what it is that you need to achieve. Because at the end of the day, there are a set of things that need to be done to achieve what it is that you want to do. And for most things that we do want to do, they have been achieved before, whether it's playing professionally in the NBA or there's tons of people playing in the NBA. Why don't you ask them what they did to get to where they are? And that is sort of what mindset is all about. It's knowing why you're doing what you're doing, and then you can bear almost any what to get to where you want to go, provided the why is strong enough. So mindset, that's why I think it's fundamentally crucial. And to, again, dive deeper into that, check out any of our first episodes, particularly episode 8 on goal setting, and that will give you a crystal clear picture of mindset. So moving on to the second concept that I really think is incredibly important, let's talk about physical preparation. Now, physical preparation is just a fancy word of describing how to get your body optimized in a way that allows you to perform as you need to perform for your chosen sport. Now, for the context of basketball, the physical preparation revolves around being able to run fast, or not even run really, being able to move fast on the floor with a quick first step, to be able to jump, to be able to be athletic, basically. Physical preparation is everything revolving around the physical development of the capabilities that allow us to perform our sport well. And physical preparation, I think, is a great term because another term that's used is strength and conditioning, but I like physical preparation because it goes beyond just strength. Basketball is a minor strength component to it. And the best way to summarize physical preparation is the specific adaptations to impose demands principle. Essentially, there's a specificity principle to sport, and what we do, we get good at. And so by working on our specific capacities, and there's a big science to it, and this is essentially what I spent, better part of, a better part of 15 years studying, but really at university, it's what I spent my university degree studying, is how does the human body adapt to various things, and what is needed to create performance adaptations for sport. And that is essentially what physical preparation is all about. And so I'm going to be providing the most impactful information that I know of to allow you to achieve optimal physical preparation. And as I talked about at the start of the episode, there are tons of amazing resources out there on this for basketball, and I'm not going to try and reinvent the wheel. I'm going to provide some of the theory and some of the key concepts you need to know. And in terms of the practical stuff, we might provide some things. We'll get MTP to do some basic stuff, but for the most part, I'm going to leave it up to the experts because it is a complex field and it's highly individualized to the level that you're at. So I don't want to reinvent the wheel. Now, that sort of summarizes physical preparation, and there's so much more to it than just strength. Like, I guess people think of the gym when they typically think of physical preparation, but really it's about understanding, what goes into, what are the energy demands, what are the physical requirements of playing basketball, and then how does our body adapt to improve those things. And that's a good way to think of physical preparation. And that's why I really like, firstly, the knees over toes guy program, because most people, I find in my experience, are undertrained at a very base level because of the way we live our lives. Physical preparation is a concept that should apply to everyone because at the end of the day, like, we are human beings. We're designed to be walking 16 kilometers a day. We're designed to be picking up heavy things and doing intermittent bouts of sprint work. If we sort of look back to what our ancestors evolved to do, it was those type of activities, a lot of walking, a lot of low intensity activity, the odd bit of high intensity activity, and lifting some heavy things and moving stuff. And that's what our body thrives on. Our body thrives on that kind of movement. And when we do move in that way, we, like they talk about with the physical activity guidelines, an hour of exercise a day is really good for improving our mortality and reducing our risk of death and improving our quality of life and everything like that. So by doing those things and by moving often, we're improving the function of our human body. And so I think physical preparation applies to anyone living life in the modern context, because the opposite also happens. When we don't physically prepare ourselves and we don't move, then our body starts to become diseased. When we stop moving as a basketball player, so we take the summer off because it's not basketball season, and we sit at home and play video games, then we're going to be worse as a basketball player. We're not going to get better. We're actually going to lose our physical preparation and our capacity. And this is what happens tragically to a lot of players, is they stop playing in summer and they stop playing year round, and they lose a lot of capacity to play. And so I think physical preparation is important for everyone. And as human beings, we must physically prepare ourselves for the activities that we're doing to reduce injury and really to just perform as well as we can. Moving on to the next core pillar of the elite athlete blueprint, and we're looking at recovery. Now, recovery is very specific to, firstly, the activity that we're participating in, but secondly, and it's a broad term as well, I should say. Recovery sort of encompasses a lot of different things, but it's very specific to exactly where you're at in your training career. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, as we know, and this is a really interesting fact for a lot of people to get their head around, but all elite performance really is simply having the ability to override the protective mechanisms that exist within our body. So basically all we're doing when we train for elite performance is, yes, sure, we're creating new structural adaptations that allow our body to perform better. And I'll sort of go on to basically, there's an article that I've written on this from the company that I work for, MTP Health, and it talks about what are the factors that go into strength, and probably what's a better way to describe it is what are the factors that go into human performance. What regulates our ability to essentially perform, and the context that it talks about is producing muscular force and being strong, quote unquote, which strength in the context that I talk about it is simply the ability of your nervous system to express force through the physical tissues that we have. Now, this is different to our sort of cardiovascular endurance and our ability to produce energy to repeatedly do those forceful productions. But what most people think of when they think of athleticism, quote unquote, is force production. So, running fast is your ability to produce force quickly and propel your structure and body forward. Jumping is the exact same thing, producing force quickly and getting up as high as possible. And then there's also sort of coordinative factors as well. But, really, for the context of athleticism here, and this is sort of what makes most athletes special, we're sort of referring to strength first and foremost, and then the endurance component for basketball. There's most basketball players will reach this point where they've got enough endurance to be able to perform, and being able to be an elite endurance athlete isn't going to really improve your performance in basketball that much, because when you watch the best basketball players, they're perfectly conditioned to be able to play basketball and do that. And usually they don't tire by the end of the game. And there's a certain threshold for, how much, I guess, like physical exertion you can tolerate. And, NBA players sort of reach that. But the thing that separates them isn't their ability to endure through a game, because all of them can endure through a game. The thing that separates them is their initial explosive ability to produce force and sort of repeat or do that. And also repeatedly, but on first step, there are plenty of people who can play a whole game of basketball, but there's not plenty of people who can jump 50 inches and, run a 40-yard dash in under 4 seconds. So the reason why I sort of talk about that is because when we're an elite performer, and there are certain genetics that predispose us to being able to do those athletic things quickly, propel our body and our frame around. And if you want more specifics about the actual physiological mechanisms, whether it's your Golgi tendon organ inhibition, or the efficiency of the nervous system, or the length of your tendons and everything like that, then you can sort of read this article and it gives you an idea of the factors that go into force production. But really, the reason why I'm sort of talking about recovery and framing recovery by this is because when we look at elite performance, it's knowing that, okay, what we're doing is, it's hard to put a percentage on it because, the data, it would be so hard to measure this, but what we're doing is sort of creating a better body. Yes, 30-40% of what we do is actually creating more tissue and creating stronger tissue so that we can tolerate more forces. But the remaining 60% or more is us actually sort of turning down the regulations that our body places on itself. And this is sort of when we don't do any activity, this is what happens. Our body starts to regulate our performance more. If we don't run and we don't go through endurance bouts, our body will start to take down the capillary networks. It will start to take down the oxygen transport around the body because, well, you don't need it. And it's very energy costing to have that, because you're going to be getting, all this blood flow and all these nutrients around the body when you don't necessarily need it for performance. Same with muscular exertion. It takes a lot of effort, and it's dangerous to exert the muscles maximally, because if you exert your muscles maximally all the time, then you run the risk of actually tearing a muscle and causing damage to the body. And this is sort of how we've evolved. It's that whole use it or lose it principle. The body adapts to what we do regularly. And really, the thing that creates elite performance is regularly training your body to turn down the brakes. And we all know there's an example of when there's like a stretch reflex, and when we go too far to stretch, the body will kick back. And when people have been placed on the surgical table and are under general anesthetic, you can put their leg up over their head and get it to touch the ground behind them. So when it comes to our body's protective mechanisms, our body's not going to allow us to stretch our limbs out past where it feels like it can control them without regularly showing the body that it can control those movements. And for the sake of just Google, like someone knocked unconscious on a table and how far they can stretch, and there's tons of resources in the article that I talk about with this. But basically, if someone's knocked out cold, you can stretch their muscles in any way, and there's nothing stopping anyone on this planet from doing the splits anatomically. The only thing that stops them is their nervous system placing an inhibition on them. And so the same thing applies for maximally exerting yourself. If you've ever listened to David Goggins talk, he sort of says, I think we only use 10% of our body. Well, that's true, because the pain that we feel when we're running and exercising is simply our body saying, hey, you should stop because you're causing too much metabolic waste. You're causing stress on the system. And if you stop now, then you'll be able to recover more and you'll be better. But what we know is that we need to stress the system, because that's the only way that we're going to get better. We're going to cause actual adaptations. And so that sort of underscores the context of elite performance. And if you don't believe me on this, then all you need to do is simply search for limit strength into Google or YouTube, limit strength. And it's a concept that they talk about in physiology textbooks. And essentially, the best way to describe limit strength is that it's the maximal amount of force that we can apply through our muscles. And I think if you look at, there's a couple of examples actually. If you look at elite weightlifters, how is it that someone can enter a certain weight class for weightlifting at, say they're 200, well, they do it in kilos. So let's say they're 100 kilos just for the sake of ease. And then they stay at 100 kilos throughout their entire career of weightlifting, yet they're able to lift more weight. So, either they continue to lose fat and gain muscle, which at a point stops, or they're able to exert more force with the amount of muscle that they already have. There's nothing else that can produce force other than muscular tissue. And so the question then comes, okay, well then where did that extra strength come from? Well, the extra strength came from their body improving its efficiency to produce force and being able to produce more force in a certain way. And this is where sort of skill comes into the picture. And also, really where we're talking about the coordination and the ability to produce force. Now, going back to the concept of limit strength is sort of really the maximal amount of force at our limit that we can produce. If our muscles fully contracted, and this is what happens when people get electrocuted, we would actually cause damage to the tendons, the connective tissue. And typically, when people only work on the muscle and they do bodybuilding style training, you can see this a lot with bodybuilders, they'll tear a bicep. What we typically find in most conventional training mechanisms, because we're so muscularly focused, is that we actually will have stronger muscles than we do tendons and connective tissue. Now, there's a number of reasons why this is the case, but I do a little summary of how to work your connective tissue is basically if you do activities that have a high amount of force, such as jumping, which can put like 7 to 10 times your body weight through the tendons because of the fact that you're dropping from a height and then summating the forces into the tendons. But really training your tendons comes down to doing high velocity, high load activities like jumping and doing them regularly enough to stimulate adaptation. And this is why, the best jumpers in the world are skinny and don't have a lot of muscle mass, but they've got incredibly elastic and strong tendons. And the knees over toes guy and Paul Favourites. Knees over toes guy is probably my favourite for explaining how to adapt your tendons over time. And it really is just basically getting out, jumping, playing your sport, and making sure you fully recover, which is, 48 to 72 hours. And there are some certain things that you can do, such as taking collagen and vitamin C, which we will definitely touch on over time. If you want some specific protocols on that, you can sort of Google it. Paul Favourites has got some great videos, but we can go into more detail if that is of interest. And, really, when we're talking about sort of adapting our tendons, it comes down to basically playing the sport in the hardest way that you possibly can at the level that you're at, and that will adapt your tendons over time, and then you just give yourself time to recover. Now, what we're really going through with the rest of it is looking at, okay, so this is what you're talking about, tendons. Tendons take about 270 days to adapt, whereas muscle can really adapt in a period of 5 weeks. So if we look at the number of days that is, well, that's about 35 days. And so looking at tendons comparatively to muscle, we see a big difference in their ability to recover, and that's why people tend to have stronger muscles than tendons. Now, this is not the case with everyone, and with great athletes, certainly not. And with those athletes who really are specifically practicing their sport, and this is why we talk about, the number one concept to getting better at performance is specifically doing the activity that you want to get better at as much as possible, and then simply using your strength work to work on the things that you're not working on in the activity that you're doing. But the more specific you can be, the better. And that's really where we come in to guide you with this, and determining the needs of what you need to get better at that specific activity. And if you just follow a general bodybuilding program, then chances are you're going to be taken away from your ability to recover as best as you can for that activity. Now, going back to the concept of limit strength, essentially in multiple forms of research, and the more you dig into limit strength, you'll see examples of women, mothers who've never really trained in their life and aren't very strong, lifting a car up off their child in a moment of threat or potential danger. And that is limit strength played out. Really, that is the idea that is the maximal amount of force that our body can produce. And like I said, if someone gets electrocuted, then they can actually break bones with the maximal contraction of their muscles. And we can't maximally contract like that, because if we did, then we'd be breaking our bones and we'd be destroying our structure. And the same with a mother lifting off a car. If a mum tried to lift a car up every single day of the week, multiple times a day, then she'd be putting an enormous amount of stress under her structure. And it could lead to issues, like particularly if she wasn't in a great position, it could lead to issues with her back and some of the areas that aren't as biomechanically suited towards picking up a car like that. Yet if she trained over time, then her body would slowly adapt to that. Yet she always has the ability to exert that much force with her muscles, yet the reason her body doesn't allow her to do it is because if she got in the wrong position, she would cause serious damage to her structure, such as a slipped disc. And it's not to say that the body is vulnerable. It is to say that over time the body can adapt to being able to do activities like deadlifting, which would be the activity of picking up a car. And it takes time for the tissue to actually really become strong enough to do that regularly. And that's more than just the muscle itself. So why do I talk about that to talk about recovery? Well, really, when we look at recovery and what goes into recovery, we see that, and the reason why I underscored all of that is because when we're really good at performing something, we're an elite performer and we can lift a lot of weight and we can jump really high, we place more stress on the body. Our limits have been turned down, yet we're still in the same body. So, while it is sort of 30-40% stronger and the tissues are 30-40% stronger, or whatever percentage we want to talk about, we're still placing 2-3 times the amount of stress that we were placing on the body before we could exert that amount of force. So what that means is that we need more recovery. So when we're really elite and older in our careers, we need more time to recover. And that's why, it's really hard to outline the perfect training week, and why there may be a lot of ambiguities for the athletes. Like I sort of say, do something every day is the best piece of advice we can give you. And that is the best advice for anyone who isn't focusing on basketball every day. No matter what stage of your career you're at, if you want to be the best player that you can, you've got to focus on basketball every day. What that training looks like will differ depending on where you're at. But for the most part, you want to be focusing on something every day. And so when we look at the concept of recovery, we see that, okay, now recovery becomes this broad concept. If we understand that we're going to be training every day or doing some form of basketball every day, then we can look at recovery as being, okay, how can I recover from the activity that I did that day? And then how long does it take to recover from that particular activity? So we can't go out as an elite performer, as a young player. It might be the best thing for you to play every day. It might be the best thing. But once you get to a certain level of skill, it's not going to be favorable for you to play every day, because if you go out and play every day, then you're not going to be able to continue to improve your skills. This is sort of why Ben Simmons is looking at maybe not playing for the Australian team, because he's already amazingly world class at playing basketball in the point guard position. What he can't do is shoot the ball, as we've just seen. And so if he continued just to go out and play for the Olympic team, yeah, sure, he might get 1% better at playing the point guard position. But the weakest link in his game is his ability to shoot the ball. And so for him, he doesn't want to be focusing all his adaptive and recovery ability on playing. At his level of performance, it probably takes him 4 days to recover from a game, and during the season, you're only getting sometimes one day to recover. And so he's probably pretty fatigued and needs some time to let his body fully replenish and work on the weak points of his game, which is definitely his shooting. And that's someone that's really elite. And the same goes for if you're starting out and you can't really dribble or shoot, then you should be playing probably. And this is why I say you want to do game specific stuff sort of 2 days out of the week, and then the rest of the time, so the other 3 to 5 days, you want to work on your skill and work on your weak points. And for some people, they might just need to play to actually get used to experiencing the game. And this is why, watching basketball is the most crucial thing that will have an impact on your game, because you don't need to recover from watching basketball. You can watch as much basketball as you want. And because of the concept of mirror neurons, there's the ability to watch and actually get better because you're watching, because you're sort of running through the skill in your brain and your motor cortex, and it's laying down that motor pattern over time. And you really just need to speak to or listen to any elite basketball player talk, and they'll tell you they watch a lot of film and they rehearse things in their head. And it really has been shown that has a significant impact on our ability to pick up skills. And I've talked about this at length before. But that's where it sort of becomes important to understand what activities that we're doing. And this is where a concept known as the high-low method comes in. And this is how I underscore some of our training programs, particularly for our elite program. And the high-low method basically is there are high threshold activities or high stimulus activities, and then there are other activities that are lower stimulus. Now, basically, if it takes you less than 24 hours to fully recover from an activity, then it's a low threshold. If it takes more than 48 hours, or I should say, if it takes more than 24 hours, then it's high threshold. There's a lot of activities that take more than 24 hours. Like basically any kind of playing basketball is going to take more than 24 hours to recover from. Any kind of potentially even longer form shooting might take more than 24 hours to recover from. If you're shooting for longer than half an hour, I think it takes longer than 24 hours to recover from in terms of the soreness, depending on what kind of shooting. If you're doing proper jump shooting, then I feel like it does. But again, it depends on your body weight. For me, because I'm a bit heavier, I find that it does lead to some residual soreness. And so even though some of the best shooters talk about shooting every day, I think for me, I'm getting to the stage where I'm experimenting with, okay, well, what if I shoot less, but just sort of practice mentally, and can I continue to hone that skill in? Question I don't know the answer to yet. And perhaps if you just want to be a shooter, then you should be shooting every day. And you're going to understand that you're sacrificing your ability to play elite defense and move quickly. But if you're just hanging your hat on being a shooter, then it might be worth it. And this is where the trade-offs come into play. And so if you understand recovery in that context, what takes longer than 24 hours to recover from, you really need to give yourself ample time. And you should only be doing those activities that take you more than 24 hours to recover from 2 to 3 times per week. If you're a really high level athlete and you're in season, twice a week. If you're a mid to lower level athlete, then you can maybe get away with more, 3 to 4. But if you're a high level athlete and you're in season, definitely only 2. And if you're sort of at a mid level, then you might be able to bump it up to 3. And that's just because of the forces that are going through the body in order to allow yourself to properly recover. Now, recovery really is this is where the gains in the gym happen, and people always forget that the benefits that you get from training don't come when you're training; they come after the training. From neural improvements, skill acquisition to actual muscular differences, it doesn't happen while you're training. And so I think a lot of skill trainers sort of talk about, you just got to grind, you just got to keep going. But if you feel awful and you don't feel great, and this is the best way to gauge your skill training. I'm sure Kobe Bryant felt great every day, and that's why he trained so much. But I'm just not being able to tolerate the volume that he tolerated. And so if you don't feel great and you don't have motivation to train, then that's a pretty good sign that you're doing too much and you need to rethink your training program. And so what I think it looks like for a lot of people is, and this is what I hear from Steph Curry's trainer, is Steph doesn't shoot 10,000 shots every day like people talk about. What Steph does is he sort of focuses on a key skill that he needs to focus on for 30 minutes in really focused, really game-specific manner, and minimizes the amount of loading that he's putting on his legs. And this is like during in-season. During the off-season, he might do some days where he shoots 1,000 to 10,000 shots, probably not 10,000, but shoots a lot of shots. But he doesn't do that every day because that would just be diminishing returns. He's already the best shooter on the planet. So what he needs to do is focus on specific things that he's weak at. And then, that motor pattern of just shooting a normal jump shot is getting worked on during those more specific performances. And the best way to make yourself a better shooter is by just shooting in game. Like, it's the closest thing to shooting. And there's so many people who can shoot well on the shooting gun, but are terrible in game. And so, once you get to a certain level of skill threshold, you can just maintain that by, practicing mentally and warming up with 50 or so shots before a game. And then you can just go all out and play and focus on, your 2 to 3 games a week and really shoot the house down there. And then you just maintain, do 50 shots as a warm-up before you're training. And so this is kind of what we like to speak about with recovery. Most people think of recovery as getting on the Normatec boots and getting in the ice bath and all that kind of stuff. But really, that's sort of the final 20%. Most of recovery is simply understanding the amount of stress that you've been putting on your body through your training, and then avoiding terrible habits. Like, you want to make sure you get enough sleep. If you're feeling tired, chances are you're not recovering well. Good rule of thumb for sleep, and I will sort of outline the basic recovery pillars, but a good rule of thumb for sleep is making sure that you wake up at the same time every day. Typically for athletes, you're going to need 8 hours or more. Some might need less. Kobe's reported to only needed 4 hours of sleep. I don't know how true that is, but anyway, some people have a gene variant where they don't need that much sleep. But really, sort of recovery comes down to making sure you're eating well, eating according to your macros, and you can go as specific as you want in terms of eating. For most people, it's really just, unless your body weight is an issue to you, then just eat as healthy as you can. We can give you some specific eating guides, and we'll definitely link some in, but eat healthy. If you're having troubles with your body or your food, then you can look at getting more specific with it. But if you're not having any problems with eating, just make sure you eat sort of healthily, what most people think of as healthy. You're going to be getting most things right, eating a serve of meat, a serve of veggies, eating your fruits, and getting enough carbohydrate to fuel your performance. I personally sort of eat more towards like a paleo, keto, plant-based diet, but that's sort of the final 20% for most athletes, particularly young athletes. It's not going to be something they need to focus on. But with that said, I don't want to discount how important it is, because there are certainly some great advice from from Knees Over Toes guy, for example, where he talks about eating the equator diet. And I've done a lot of research into this myself, and I'm very focused on trying to get as lean as possible while sustaining my performance. And that's another topic which I'll definitely cover off. But I want this just to be an overview so that people can focus on the most important stuff first. And so, making sure you're getting your sleep, eating well, not eating like an idiot. Don't eat crap, don't eat junk. The one blanket rule that I'll say to everyone is stay away from canola oil, stay away from hydrogenated vegetable oils. Olive oil is good, but most things like potato chips and all that kind of stuff has hydrogenated vegetable oils in it, and it's just not going to do anything good for you at all. But with that said, if you're not having any troubles with your body weight and you're happy with where you're at, and food isn't really affecting you and your energy's great, then by all means, don't change anything. This is one thing, like I played with a lot of guys in America who were freak athletes, like shredded, jacked, and they were eating lollies before the game and KFC and crap, basically. And I mean, their body just was able to tolerate that kind of stuff, and it wasn't a problem for them. And sure, long term, it might not be the healthiest thing, but while they were playing, doesn't matter. The more you exercise and the more active you are, the more your body can tolerate the food that you put through it. And this is the biggest thing, is like really nutrition comes down to what your body can process. And if you're eating more than what your body can process, that's where you're not healthy. But if your body can process it, then it is fine. And sure, like you might be affecting your health a little bit longer term, and if that's something that bothers you, then you can look into it. But for most people, it's not worth the investment if they're already doing well. And like I don't want to discount health as well, because health is one thing that I really, really love and enjoy. And I think to be the best athlete you can possibly be, it's something that you should look at. But I think it's something you should look at. Obviously eating as healthy as you possibly can is a great start, but in terms of investing your time in researching, you're much better off investing in elite mindset and understanding the intricacies of the game of basketball before you invest in the finer points of eating only organic and so on and so forth, unless you have enough money to sort of work with a specialist on it. Because unless you're investing every second of your day into being the most elite athlete you can be, you got to use your precious time on the things that are going to have the biggest impact. And so with that said, I'd love for everyone to be optimally healthy and eating only organic and eating mostly plant-based and avoiding all the terrible foods that I know that modern population eats. But I'm also realistic as to what the goal for most people listening to this is, and it's becoming the best basketball player they can be. It's not being as healthy as they can be. With that said, if you want to be as healthy as you can be and you want to work with an expert, I am pretty confident in what I do, and we can organize a conversation where I can point you in the right direction of what you might need to be doing. But it's certainly important to touch on nutrition here, and we'll certainly have experts on the show providing their sort of basic pillars of nutrition for what you guys are trying to achieve. But if you want to go more specific, then absolutely hit me up directly, and we can work out a plan, because I think you're definitely going to improve your performance if you focus on it. And we have to assess sort of where you're at holistically to give you the right information where you need it. So that is a really other key component to recovery. And then, really the other stuff like using Normatec boots, having an ice bath, all that kind of stuff, you don't really need it. It's another thing where it can refine your performance in the long run. I like the Theragun as an actual warm-up tool as well as a potential recovery tool, but it's expensive, and it's again one of the things. It's like the 1% that's going to make a slight amount of difference, but if you're not doing the big stuff, then there's no point in focusing on it. So we'll sort of outline a list of, I guess, the hierarchy of recovery, so it's really clear for you guys. But I think just to set the scene for recovery and how important it is, talking about that stuff there is the key parts to recovery, and remembering that recovery is the time where your body is able to optimize itself. I should actually touch on meditation as well. LeBron James has got a great segment on the Calm app on meditation, and really meditation, the importance of that is just allowing your body to minimize the amount of stress that it goes through. Wim Hof is another great guy who talks a lot about the importance of meditation and your ability to calm down the nervous system and minimize stress to allow recovery. And so, really, to summarize, recovery is about minimizing the stresses on the body when we're not training and allowing ourselves to fully adapt to the training that we're doing and understanding how much stress the training that we are doing places on our body and how long it takes physiologically to recover from those things. And when we understand that, we can design our perfect training week and we can ensure that we're recovering optimally. So we just spoke a lot about recovery and how we sort of flip the typical and conventional ideas about recovery on its head and sort of thought about it in the context of us specifically. And, that really serves as a great metaphor for what the elite athlete blueprint is all about in terms of allowing you to individually take the concepts of, scientific performance and scientific sporting performance and apply them to your situation, because that is the point of science. They're principles and they're theories that apply to anybody. And what it takes is to step beyond the conventional methods, quote unquote, and to take the mind of a coach and someone who understands what they're working with and allow it to work with your current situation. And so with that, we will go into the next major area or the major pillar of the elite athlete blueprint, which is the individual topic of lifestyle. Now, lifestyle is an interesting one. And for me, it's just a word that encompasses a number of different things that are really, really crucial to make sure that you're nailing if you have the intention of being an elite athlete. Now, what do I really mean by lifestyle? Well, there's a number of things that go into lifestyle that I'm pretty excited to be able to include because it's something that in my life, I've kind of stumbled across, and I really think the elite athlete blueprint represents an example and a way and a method to sort of not follow the status quo, to have an active mind, to think through what it is that you really want within your life, and to connect yourself to the innate purpose that you have within you. And so one of the key elements of lifestyle is sort of living life on your terms. Now, lifestyle is one of those ones that really sort of encompasses a lot of the different areas of the 6 pillars of elite athleticism. It could be argued that what we do within our lifestyle in terms of, where we play basketball, how far we travel to play basketball, how often are we sitting, all those kinds of things that you're not doing when you're training and, consciously thinking about your food, because I guess nutrition kind of goes into both lifestyle and recovery. But all those things that you're sort of doing when you're not consciously thinking about training and sort of the incidentals of your life is where I really like to talk about lifestyle. And I also think lifestyle is a form or a great way and a great place to introduce some really powerful habits. Now, there are certainly, for example, like training every single day could be a function of your lifestyle. And so we're going to talk a lot about habits in this pillar of the elite athlete blueprint. And we're going to talk a lot about, the habits that you can put into your lifestyle to achieve success. And, one really great way to answer the question of, what's the importance of lifestyle is to look at the lifestyle of the best athletes in the world. They sort of get up in the morning. The first thing they do is train. Obviously, they do the hardest bit of the day. They do their training. Then they come home and they're chilled when they're not training. They're relaxed. Lifestyle, a really big component of lifestyle is sort of this concept of being present, meditating, being sort of aware and understanding the importance of meditation. Now, this is going to be a topic in and of itself, but it's really, really important to nail the piece of being relaxed, being present, present at all times, but being relaxed when you don't need to be on alert mode. And most people walking around are sort of in this constant state of fight or flight. We have to understand how to be at one with ourselves, how to be at one with the body that we're in, so that we can turn down the stress hormones, allow ourselves to recover. And this is where lifestyle turns into recovery, and allow our body to optimally restore itself. That's why we have the fight or flight system and the rest and digest system. So in lifestyle, we're going to talk about emotional intelligence. We're going to talk about all of these concepts that go into sort of making a great business person, and all of these concepts of personal development that don't necessarily fit within the other pillars. And lifestyle is probably the one that I'm the most excited about, because it gives me a lot of freedom to talk about some of the things that have had massive impacts on my life, and to speak to people who have had amazing impacts on my life, and to get the world's best experts. And I truly think it is the topic that will change the lives of many people who listen to it. And it's what our world needs. There's so much great information that's being passed around outside of the conventional schooling and university system. And it would be a shame for someone not to be able to get access to that information simply because they don't read or they don't listen to podcasts. And, it's just not something that they've ever been shown to do and seen the value in. And I hope that by, connecting with my passion of basketball and the people who are passionate about it, that I can sort of bridge the gap and, connect these really powerful concepts for me to people who need them, and they can use them to, achieve their own goals, and then, further the work of this. I think it's really about the evolution of society as a whole, when we look holistically. And I tend to get a little bit esoteric with some of these podcast episodes, and forgive me if it kind of goes over your head or you get a bit sick of it. But, well, unfortunately, that's what I love talking about, and I know a lot of people are going to benefit from it. And, really that's what I see it as, see it as is this way to allow people to evolve with superior habits of people who have really mastered some of the great habits that allow human beings to achieve success. And one of those is meditation and emotional intelligence. And this is where all the components of lifestyle kind of come into things. And I'm going to speak sort of at length about it now, because it's something that really does excite me, and what you can expect from it. So, for me, just sort of thinking about it holistically at the moment, lifestyle really encompasses the key things that you're doing outside of basketball specifically, because we've got, I guess there's the recovery component as well, but the other pillars, we've got like physical preparation, we've got recovery, we've got mindset, we've got specific tactical development, and we've got skill development. They're all sort of very related to basketball, and mindset, is a general one for sure. But there's other things that aren't necessarily mindset related. They're more actual doing things. And so they work closely together. And, as I've sort of said, okay, well, the lifestyle component encompasses things like meditation, things like our habits. What time are you going to bed? And this ties into recovery, but it's like, are you getting to bed before or to suit your chronotype? Are you getting quality sleep before 12? Are you getting up at the same time every day? How do you spend time with the people around you? Are you generally in a good mood? This is where we can introduce sort of positive psychology and the practical components of that, which tie into the mindset piece. This is where we can introduce sort of, what are you feeding your mind with? And again, this does tie into mindset, but what are you feeding your mind with day to day? Are you watching junk TV, or are you feeding your mind with the information that's going to help you progress? As I sort of talk about a lot in this Elite Athlete Blueprint, there's so much for us to be learning, and so much to be learned. Someone who reads 6 hours a day is Warren Buffett, and more than 6 hours a day. He probably reads 8 to 10 hours a day, and he's nowhere near having learned everything that he needs to learn on this planet. And, for those of us who don't read at all, then, well, we're 8 or 10 hours of reading in a really efficient way that Warren Buffett reads per day behind him, which is, if we look at the numbers on that, he's going to be reaching sort of that 10,000 hour mark at about 3 or 4 years. So, Warren Buffett's in his 80s now, and he's been doing that for at least 60 years. He might even be in his 90s. So he is sort of 3 or 4 professional basketball careers ahead of most of us in terms of the amount of knowledge that he has, and yet he's nowhere near what he needs to know, and doesn't know everything by any stretch of the imagination. And everyone has an individual set of knowledge and skill sets that is uniquely true for a certain component. And this is why I'm such a big proponent of feeding your mind with useful information that you can use right now and that has stood the test of time. That's coming from experts, and that's what this whole thing is about: is connecting you with the experts and allowing you to make up your mind for yourself instead of just trusting blindly the methods that are outlined. And I see this with basketball, particularly in our country. A lot of kids just resign themselves to exactly what their coach says and, the syllabus of the governing bodies. And while I don't have anything against Basketball New South Wales or Basketball Australia and what they do, because it is amazing and we achieve great results at an international level based on our population, I still think that there is room for players to take an active mind in their own development. And I know this is what the Australian Institute of Support supports. The Centre of Excellence supports this. I've listened to podcasts from the head coach there, which I have actually linked to in one of the modules. And he talks about we want players to be their own best head coach, but it can be sometimes daunting for players to do that because they don't know how to do it. And they're not readers. They're not actively searching for things. It's easy to take the advice of your coach and simply just do the exact workout that is recommended by Basketball New South Wales or whatever. And again, I'm not trying to pick on them. I just know that they're doing such an amazing job across the country that a lot of players tend to do that. And so this is your invitation to take that on board, to work with it, and then potentially adapt it when you find that it is no longer producing the results that it initially produced. And really just think creatively about the kind of game that you want to play. And look at the players that you want to play like, and understand, you have to play within a system if you're playing at that representative level, but then understand, okay, well, where can I develop my skills to play more like the player I want to play like while also playing within that system? And that's where, creating your perfect training week comes into things. But I digress as I tend to with this, but I sort of want to go back to some of the other components of lifestyle that I really, really do want to talk about. And another one of those is, what are you doing for work? And how does your work life support basketball? Because it's a reality of life. And while in the goal setting component, I really encourage our younger athletes to just go about setting, even though I outline the 5-25 method and sort of talk about, okay, pick your 5 or your 20, list down your top 25 things that you want to work on in your life, and then go for the top 5 that if you only achieve those or focus on those, you'd be the most happy, and then get rid of the other 20. And while I encourage people to do that and pick the top 5, I think for younger athletes, they probably won't have 25 different things. They'll probably have a couple of things they really want to do. And say, for example, it's professional basketball. Well, by being a professional basketball player, you inherently are going to achieve a lot of things. And so for younger athletes, they're probably going to say, oh, look, I want to play in the NBA. I want to make $1 million. I want to travel the world, et cetera, et cetera. And by playing in the NBA, you're going to achieve all of those things. So you may as well sort of just really focus in on the basketball side of things and say, okay, I want to be a professional basketball player. And then as you go through, you can add more cool things to that list and see how they fit within it. But if you really focus in on the be a pro basketball player, then you can just focus all your energy on that. And chances are, if you're trying to be the best basketball player that you can be, and this is one thing, we're going to work into the lifestyle component, you're going to be a great person as well. And so, really as part of the lifestyle component for the younger athletes, we're going to talk a lot about, okay, how can you optimize your lifestyle at school? We have to work with the reality of where people are at. How can you optimize your lifestyle at school to study effectively? As the Sydney Supersonics, between us, and we know plenty of world experts who are great studiers and who have achieved amazing things like finish their PhDs and everything like that. And, we learn a thing or two about studying throughout our time at university and through studying neuroscience and understanding how the human mind learns things. And unfortunately, we were never taught those things at school. I know I was never taught those things. And it's pretty simple when you actually put it into a lecture and help people to learn through that way. And we can connect you with the best resources that we've come across. But, in a nutshell, the best way to learn is to actually teach and actively learn. So go through and try and teach and answer your syllabus dot points in a YouTube teaching, just like this. You can do a podcast or whatever. Some great people have done that, like the prehab guys, and there's tons of stuff on YouTube of people, drawing up their lectures, but, whatever suits you best. But, that is an example of, rethinking what's conventional and doing an amazing job to really go above and beyond and be more effective in your learning. And what you'll find is when you do that and you sort of play the game of learning, in New South Wales, there's the HSE, if it is still HSC. And really, it's a game. There's tests, there's standardized tests, and if you just simply answer the dot points and do the most efficient things, then you're going to get great results at the end of the day. And so, all of the components in the lifestyle section that are aimed at things outside of basketball, we're not going to go into depth ourselves. We're going to get the experts who can help you with it further. But what the lifestyle components there are going to be about is helping you to really think deeply about the things that you're going to be doing day to day, and then taking those things and thinking, I guess, creatively about how you can maximize the efficiency of the time that you're spending on those things so that you can either use them to help your basketball and your elite athleticism. An example would be, say, it's in school and you're learning science. Well, then how can I apply these scientific principles that I'm learning to my training, and how does it relate to what they're teaching me in the Elite Athlete Blueprint? A really cool one could be like, you're studying physics, and then you get on to classical mechanics, and then you can start to look up, some biomechanics and see, how much force am I applying through my body when I'm doing a certain movement? And, okay, I can see how mechanics would relate. Okay, that's why, deadlifting a certain way might not be so great for my back. And then, you can understand how biologically you can adapt, and, how the process of energy transport works in the human body and all that kind of stuff, which is really cool. And it doesn't necessarily directly translate to your ability to perform better, but it gives you a really cool theoretical understanding, so that down the line, when you have to think about, okay, should I have carbs or fats before this game, and think creatively about the recommendations, you can understand that. And it really just comes from a sense of curiosity. Curiosity, I think, is one of the most important things, and is another key lifestyle concept that we'll teach. And, honestly, the reason I focus so much on curiosity and talk about it and feel comfortable talking about it is because I heard in an interview from Kobe Bryant, that was the biggest thing that governed his life. He was just curious. He was curious about how he could be a better basketball player. He was curious about how he could tell amazing stories, and then he won an Oscar. He was simply just curious in every day, and it helped him to learn great things, from learning new languages to doing well at school, to discovering what it took to really get inside people's minds and be the best basketball player possible. It would be amazing if Kobe Bryant sat down and made an Elite Athlete Blueprint, because, man, if he was still alive, we would get some amazing information from him, some unique insights that no one's ever thought of, because there's only so much research we know about. And so, that's going to be the aim of this program over time, is that we do get the word from the Kobe Bryants of the world, the greatest people in the world, who can conceptualize a lot of the theory that I've learned at university, and a lot of the stuff that I've read about, and the practical experience that I've encountered in my career as an athlete, and all of the athletes that we have within us. And I've definitely done my 10,000 hours of reading into elite human performance, and I can say for a fact that there are definitely things that can be done to really, really optimize what you have, and everyone knows that. I'm really probably not saying anything new there, and chances are, if you've gotten better at basketball, you understand that. And so, to touch on some other things of lifestyle, I guess I want to introduce the idea that, okay, as a professional basketball player, you can work a career that allows you to work remotely, that allows you to spend more time playing basketball. You don't have to work a conventional 9-to-5 job in a factory, like I see a lot of basketball players doing. You can think about, okay, what are you going to study at university, and then how is that going to relate to what you're doing? And you don't have to wait to start earning money. With basketball, there's so many things that aren't being done well at the moment, and there's so much opportunity. And I'm not going to give anyone a business lesson, but I'm just going to show people the amount of opportunity that still exists, and the need there is for people to learn skill sets that are going to help their basketball, and then also people will pay for, and allows them to sort of work in careers that are really going to suit their lifestyle. I think, one of the best careers that not enough people think about, because they rule it up to nerds or whatever, and it can be learned in 4 or 5 years. So you can start when you're 14, and by the time you're in your finishing high school, you can already be earning $100,000 plus, is computer programming. And I think they're teaching it in school now. And I mean, you can get a whole university course worth of computer programming for free. So in your school holidays, in the time that you're not playing basketball, which is probably going to be, 8 to 10 hours a day. I guess if you're watching film, you're probably going to have, if you're doing everything that you can, you're probably still going to have 5 hours at least of time to do other stuff other than basketball. And so why not spend 1 to 3 hours of that time learning a skill like computer programming or marketing or copywriting or something like that, so that that when you're at university, you can earn yourself some money doing a skill. If you go into computer science, doing a skill that you're already learning about, or um, doing something that can easily pay for you to live a great lifestyle, and then you can play basketball on the side. Like, a lot of people kind of don't know what to do after they finish college basketball because they have to make money, and it's hard working a job and playing. Whereas if you go and play college, and then while you're at college, you sort of just continue doing little jobs for computer programming, and by the time you finish college, you've already got yourself a job lined up. You can keep playing basketball professionally, and still work on that dream of trying to make it to the big leagues. And I think the thing that stops a lot of players from making it to the big leagues after college or making it professionally is they kind of just don't know where to go, and they kind of struggle through working a job and it doesn't fit their lifestyle. And so we want to help give people the idea of what they can do through that. And there's tons of great books that we'll introduce in the lifestyle component there, such as the 4 Hour Work Week. Really teach the concept of sort of being efficient and effective that 4 Hour Work Week talks about, and just showing people how they can rethink their lifestyle to suit playing basketball. I think another really key component, like I spoke about, is the low stress ideas, and making sure that when you're not playing basketball, you're allowing yourself to recover, and you don't be like ridiculously dogmatic about not going to the party, and not seeing your friends, because those are crucial components to being optimally successful and healthy, is seeing friends and everything like that. You don't have to shut yourself out. And I guess, like, someone like Kobe Bryant might argue against that. I personally don't believe you do have to do that. I'm not sure what Steph Curry was like in that regard, but I'm pretty sure he was quite social and he seems sociable. And you just have to make sure, I guess, that you're not making sacrifices on your training for working or going out socially. And you're going to benefit from that. So, we'll talk about, the benefits of being social and how to be social as an elite athlete, and some insights from some great athletes and everything like that, and just showing you the lifestyle things that can really make a big difference to your ability to be an elite athlete. We'll be hearing from some elite athletes as to what their lifestyle's like, how you can set up your training in convenient ways, how you can make food and nutrition really convenient for you. For me, honestly, eating well is a function of my habits. It's not really a choice thing. Like, if I just set it up so that I get up in the morning, I eat pretty much the same thing every day, I kind of know how many calories I'm going to be eating. Tracking my calories is super easy. It actually is easier for me than not tracking anything at all. And my food and habits is a function of my lifestyle. And so really, that's what we're getting at with lifestyle. Lifestyle is kind of this all-encompassing thing of everything that is not happening when you're not playing basketball, training, or actively thinking about basketball or learning. So, learning and listening to the podcast regularly is another habit that we're going to talk about, and we have done an episode on. That is a perfect example of lifestyle. And so it really is this all-encompassing thing, and it's sort of the gaps that fill all of the stuff that allows you to get the most out of this and to be, an elite athlete outside of your training. And I think, honestly, it's probably one of the most important components that we will talk about in these 6 pillars. And there'll probably be some form of structure to it, but to start with, it's going to be a bit of a free-for-all based on things you want to hear about and some of the key topics that allow you to set yourself up for success over the long run. Because remember, it's going to be a 10-year journey. So we may as well enjoy our life in that process. It's about the journey, not just the destination. Science has shown that when we're happy and we have positive emotions about our training, and it's not a grind, and we really enjoy our training and we're present and we're happy, we're going to perform so much better than if we feel like it's a struggle and we're only working towards an extrinsic motivation of just achieving a goal. So that is a bit of a brief about what we'll be talking about with the lifestyle component of the 4 pillars. And it's a really great component. On to the next one. So here we are at the back end of the 6 pillars athletic performance. And sort of to touch on the last two, and this is where it gets into the most specific components of basketball specifically. And this has been a really long episode because I wanted to dive deep into each of these 6 pillars. Over time, we will condense the message as to what the 6 pillars are all about as we get feedback from all of you guys about the things that resonate the most with you, the things that you need more help with, and generally just the information that we have available. But for now, I think it's best to just kind of describe philosophically what all of the key pillars of athletic performance are all about, so that you can get a good high-level overview and you can get excited about the potential that each of these hold. Really, the greatest thing about this Elite Athlete Blueprint is that it gives you the ultimate power of knowledge, of benefiting from the great information that comes from those who have stood before us. And that really is the best thing about living in a society today. I sort of had a reflection on this morning. I think one of the things that has allowed us to become great as humanity is that we're able to stand on the shoulders of those who lived before us. It's a quote from Isaac Newton. And essentially, the scientists and the people that lived in the 1800s, so if we use the example of Isaac Newton, there's probably thousands of people with equal level of intellect that Isaac Newton had walking around in this day and age, and probably beyond his level of intellect, because of how far science has evolved and because of how well we're able to sort of think about things and conceptualize truth. In his time, there was no concept of quantum physics and the deeper levels of physics. And now, because of the work that he did, we're able to sort of expand our knowledge base as human beings and have a greater concept of knowledge. And that same principle applies to basketball and elite athletic performance. You see Steph Curry walking around, and he is a significantly better player than any guard really that has ever come before him in terms of his physical attributes. I think it's like someone might argue that Russell Westbrook would be a better player. I would disagree, because I think Steph Curry's shooting ability, you can put him on any team and he will be able to take over a game. But the example sort of rings true that Steph Curry's skill is far exceeding any other player that has ever come before him in terms of shooting. And that will be the example, and this is why that people talk about Steph being arguably the greatest player of our current generation. And in terms of maximizing his physical attributes, I think could be said that he is the best player. I also think James Harden fits into that category. You compare it to LeBron, who is argued as the GOAT, or MJ, and it's like they have physical attributes that most people aren't even close to. MJ was an incredible athlete, one of the greatest athletes the game has ever seen. And LeBron fits that category as well. And so those two will be regarded as the two greatest players to ever play the game. And in terms of skill as well, they did improve the game skill-wise a lot as well. Sorry about that. I had a little bit of an interruption, but as we were sort of saying, the evolution of skill is coming along rapidly, and I think players in this day and age shouldn't think that guys in the NBA are the absolute epitome of what's possible, because it was Mavericks like Steph Curry and Kobe Bryant in his time, and guys like Nikola Jokic, who are coming through and really challenging the perception of what it means to be an elite basketball player for your position and style of play and everything like that. So an incredibly powerful thing to think through and have within your mindset is understanding, and this is why I want to sort of frame this whole concept of skill development and the elements of elite athletic performance, is that no one has all the answers. No one knows exactly what it requires to be the best basketball player that you can be. They only know what it takes to be as good as they are. And when you get a nationally created syllabus and curriculum, then it's always going to be a watered down version of elite performance. And so if you just followed what's outlined by Basketball Australia, for example, then you're probably going to be 80% as good as, at most, 80% as good as the best athletes who they got that system from, because it's not being taught by the person who was that good. It's not like it's being taught by, say, Andrew Gaze, for example. It's being taught by studying examples of what he learned from. And so it's going to be a watered down version of what he would do. It's like if Basketball USA tried to create a shooting curriculum from all the best shooters in the NBA. They're going to aggregate all the information, but you could take all the information from everyone and it would be somewhat similar. But the thing that makes someone like Steph Curry magical is his ability to do certain things so often and have certain principles in his training program that not everyone's doing. And so when you grab an aggregate and combine everything together, then it's inherently not going to be as good as the original source. And so the reason I say that is because it's incredibly important to remember when it comes to elite athleticism and your own abilities, to know that what you're doing is individual to you, and you have to take your own kind of vision for basketball and your own ideas about what you want to achieve, and studying the best in the world, and also studying the big syllabuses in the Basketball Australia syllabus and work within those systems and everything like that. But you have to make it your own. And so I think it's a really worthwhile thing to talk about and just introduce as a little interlude to then go into our skill development piece. Because without that, you're really selling yourself short as a player. And we have to realize that as humans, we constantly are evolving. And if we look at human beings from the early 1800s or the 1600s and compare that to how athletically we move. I mean, you look at basketball players from the 30s and 40s, and we can see a drastic difference between now and then. And in the episode of PJF Performance Podcast, he talks about this or in an episode, I believe it's in the Tyler Harvey episode that we've linked in the Elite Athlete Blueprint. But what he sort of talks about is from the 30s and 40s, no one's really, actually it was in the interview with Devin Williams, 10,000 Hours interview, talks about the difference in cuts that players are making now. You look at what Kemba Walker's doing, his joint angles, like his knees almost touching the floor, and because of the shoes that they're wearing now and just the general movement that people have, it's completely different to what it was in the 30s and 40s. And so we're making different athletes. People are adapting differently, and they're learning these things through the mirror neurons and modeling other players. And so when we go into the concept of, this is the fifth pillar, or as I talk about in the course, I believe it's the fourth pillar. This is the pillar of individual skill development, and it ties directly into the next pillar, which this is the most specific to individual sports. So if you're an athlete who's not involved in round 3 basketball, or you're an athlete who's not involved in basketball at all, then you can apply this to your sport. But you'll need to get specific tactical recommendations from your coach or from another guide. But in terms of like skill and sporting development, this is sort of where most basketball programs are focused in on. There's sort of 2 key components to skill development that allow someone to improve their ability to play a game. And it sort of exists on this spectrum or this continuum, where on one end, you've got the fundamental skill sets that are most relevant for all players and all sort of positions in that game. And then on the other end, you've got the very specific skill sets and tactics that are only really relevant for a certain style of game or a certain style of player or a certain style of team play. And so when we look individually at the fourth pillar or the fifth pillar, in the way that we presented in the Elite Athlete Blueprint, that is the pillar of individual skill development. And this pillar is absolutely critical to being successful in a sport. And this is sort of where we're going to borrow from a lot of the greatest minds out there on YouTube and on the internet to do with skill development. So, what we're going to be looking at is, okay, who teaches skill development really, really well, incredibly well? Guys like Drew Hanlon, like Paul Fabrice, like a lot of the guys that we've been talking about. And we're going to link you to their resources. Like, how can you master the fundamentals? How can you master shooting? How can you master dribbling? How can you master cutting? How can you master the movement skills needed for basketball? How can you master jumping, layups? All the stuff that is really at the fundamentals of basketball. And I've put in the Elite Athlete Blueprint a guide from breakthrough basketball outlining fundamentals, footwork, pivoting. It's what they talk about that allows for individual greatness. And this is the stuff that any individual player needs to be able to do to be successful regardless of the system they play in. This is one thing that Kobe Bryant was great at, was playing and mastering his individual skill set. And so, this is the stuff that a lot of people, and there's a lot of information already on, but a lot of people really focus a lot of time on. And it's sort of where these skill trainers come in, and it's really sort of individually focused. And then as we sort of progress more towards the final pillar, which is tactical development, we start to see things that are a bit more tactic based. So if it's 3-on-3 or for certain positions, it's learning how to play out of the pick and roll. It's 2-on-2 game. It's starting to go beyond simply just skill development, even going into 1-on-1 style stuff. And it goes in order of sort of specificity and team based. So as we progress from individual skills, we start to go into 2-on-2, as I said, 3-on-3 stuff, cutting without the ball, skills that sort of require you to read and react more. And I guess there's sort of an intermediary between specific tactical skills for 3-on-3 and for 5-on-5 and for team play, and between individual skills. And that's sort of like, the off the ball movement, the playing within a system, the backdoor cuts, and learning how to read and react in the game of basketball. And this is sort of where they talk about basketball IQ a lot of the time. And this is the kind of thing that, again, we're going to be sharing from a lot of the best resources. And this is the stuff that you learn from playing, that you learn from a great coach. And so we're going to be connecting with the great coaches to give you guides on this. We're going to introduce you to the best resources available and introduce you to the great coaches on this. And also, use our own experience to foster that out. And so that's kind of like that middle one in terms of, all right, well, what do we do from when we've mastered the fundamentals, we've mastered the basic skills, you've followed the outline that we have in the basic skills, and you've built yourself a plan. And then how do I apply that in the game context? And this is where, watching film really goes into its own. Once you understand all of the elements that go into basketball, you could essentially be studying the game for life. Kobe Bryant is a great example of this. He's someone who has watched, more film than anyone in the world, particularly studying his craft and applying curiosity to it. And every time he watches the game of basketball, and if you read the Mamba mentality, you'll see, he learns something new, he discovers something new, and there's so many layers within the game of basketball. And that's what we're trying to decode when we sort of start to master tactical and skill preparation. And so this is a really, really exciting area, because when you watch film and you start to analyze things, this is where you can go deep. And, by any means, basketball is a great film analysis resource that we'll definitely link to. And it gives you an idea of what you can do. And then as a player, you can start to do that yourself. You can get, anyone can go onto YouTube and analyze film. All you need is a Mac or a computer and the YouTube. And then all you got to do is go take a screen capture of the clip. And then you've got, your clips there, and you can start to organize them based on the things that you start to read within basketball. And Drew Hanlon has some great guides on it, and you can analyze like all of the things that the best players are doing by watching film. And in the process of watching film, you're getting the mirror neurons working, and you're starting to further ingrain the skill. And then you're also improving your ability to play and recognize those situations in a game and read and react. And that's how, true mastery develops. And as we talk about in the perfect training week, you're going to be spending sort of around 20 hours a week on mental training and also physical training. But if you want to go over and above, then I'd recommend it. Only in certain patches do you go above the minimum or the go above the recommended amount of physical training. But in terms of mental training, you could watch film all day. You're going to reach a saturation point where you kind of feel a bit fatigued from it and you want to do something else. But in terms of mental practice and watching film, and if you want to be as elite as you possibly can be, then you really can't do too much of this. And so this is where a lot of players have the greatest ability to grow and invest a lot of time. And so we'll have a sort of film breakdown guide and we'll outline that. And then going into the last area, which is the specific tactical preparation required for 3-on-3 basketball. And this is the area that no one's really touched, and no one's really doing well at all. Look at the guides that a lot of 3-on-3 coaches talk about, and they talk about very basic offense designed for isolation type plays. Whereas what we know from playing and watching Elite 3-on-3 is that the best players rarely do a lot of isolation work. The most common scores that are done in 3-on-3, well, the most common score is actually free throws. So you have to be able to shoot your free throws. And then 2-point shots are obviously heavily weighted because of the fact that you're playing ones and twos. But really where a lot of great scoring opportunities come from 3-on-3 and the 3-on-3 game is actually when players are moving without the ball, they're setting screens and they're causing and creating space from their defender. So it's not necessarily a one-on-one move. They'll go and play 2-on-2, set a screen, and either, I guess there's backdoor cuts a lot of the time and off-ball movement there, but the greatest way to score easy buckets in 3-on-3 is setting screens and then causing a switch and reading and reacting what the defenders are doing and quickly either slipping or flaring or moving without the ball so that you can slip to the basket. So you're creating the defenders, getting a bit of doubt in their minds, creating the space between them, setting the screen and then quickly slipping or denying the screen and making the defender, just not know what's going to happen and kind of lulling them into thinking you're going to go one way and then go back the other way if you've got the ball, or the opposite is if you're the screener is just going to set the screen, faking setting the screen when the defender sets their feet and slipping to the basket. And you'll watch so many scores in that way when the team starts to work together as a team and they understand, the principles of playing 3-on-3. It's beautiful to watch. They're going to be slipping to the basket. They're going to be doing these really great plays where, it's like they're perfectly in sync. They'll throw an early pass, the ball floats up nicely into the middle of the key, and the player goes in for a nice, easy score. Instead of what a lot of novice 3-on-3 teams will do is they just try to isolate either in the post or from the 3-point line. And if you're a great player, then sure, you can do that. And it can be great to finish a game like that. But for the most part, you're going to score a lot more easy buckets by really just mastering teamwork components, knowing, being in sync with your players, throwing early passes, learning the difference between what passes you can throw for 3-on-3, how early to throw things, how to read defenders and how to cut, backdoor and continue moving, and then also keeping up with transition in 3-on-3 because it's such a fast-paced game. There's always going to be transition plays and going from sort of setting a screen and getting scored on to then going straight into either shooting or backdoor cutting or really just knowing how to play within that. Another great move that comes within 3-on-3 is being able to shot fake, get a defender off the ground, and then just cut, go give and go basically. So give to your player, cut through to the basket. There's not going to be any help defenders, and you can sail straight through. So you can take advantage. It's sort of like playing chess when everyone else is playing checkers. You can take advantage of the defense and the lack of help that they're going to have by manipulating your individual defender to end up somewhere and then throwing a pass and then simply getting it back. And so these are some of the examples of the specific 3-on-3 tactics that we're going to be teaching through the Sydney Supersonics and teaching you how to play the best style of 3-on-3 game. We've got 3-on-3 defense and how to play elite 3-on-3 defense, how to play better as a team. And then we're going to be talking about how this benefits your 5-on-5 game and what kind of skills it really works on. So really, really powerful concept in the final pillar of the sort of elite athlete blueprint, and it's a really, really cool sort of concept to focus on, and there is no other material like this out there. No one's studying the best teams in the world. The only people that are doing it, they're keeping it to themselves, and we think that's a travesty. We want to see the game evolve, and we want to show people that through accessing round three in this way, you can have a lot more fun playing street ball. You can develop your individual skill sets, and we can prove our country's ability to play basketball. We can have better off-ball players, more intelligent players, players that have more fun playing together. And when they talk about players that have great chemistry or players that are in sync, well, they're in sync by mastering these tactical concepts of understanding how to play unselfishly, how to play smart, and how to play without the ball. And a lot of the guys I play with in Australia, and I need to get better at this as well, but a lot of the guys I play with just don't know these things, and they're not great at them. And so firstly, by talking about them and then teaching them in our programs and throwing them into game situations within our Supersonics games, we can help people to do this. It's one of the coolest things that we're most excited to teach, and it's something that's baked into all of our programs. And we have our 3-on-3 Ready program that is designed to sort of progressively teach people a lot of these specific tactical components to 3-on-3. But working with our coaches who have played 3-on-3 in the international level and have studied it for years, we really are super excited to teach about this and then get some of the greatest minds in the 3-on-3 world in to talk about these specific tactical components and give you the complete picture you need for being not only an elite 3-on-3 basketball player, but an elite athlete and just an amazing sort of human being in general. As we've sort of talked about a lot, these principles are designed to be sort of ubiquitous and relevant for anyone, no matter what endeavor they're pursuing. We've just happened to use the example of 3-on-3 basketball because it is a compelling example, and it can teach us a lot about life. And so when people talk about ball is life, or the quote, sort of basketball will dramatically improve your life, or sport will dramatically improve your life, all of the things within the elite athlete blueprint and what we're sort of working on and how you can apply those is the perfect example of why that is the case. So thank you very much for bearing with me. Hope you enjoyed the 6 pillars of elite athleticism. As always, don't forget to ask tons of questions. We want to be guided by you in terms of what we do and how we create these things. Look forward to hearing from you all, and we'll see you all in the games. Let's speak soon.